Oh, hey, fellow artists. It is Roz here. In today's episode, I chat with Irene from Aspire Gallery about how their family run gallery supports emerging artists and helps them build sustainable careers. We talk about competitions, feature walls, representation, and what makes an artist stand out when applying to galleries. If you've ever wondered how gallery relationships actually work, this conversation offers a rare behind the scenes look. This is episode 112 of the Paint Rest Repeat podcast, which means you can find all the relevant links and the show notes over at permissiontopaint.co/podcast 112. Welcome to Paint Rest Repeat, the podcast for artists who are ready to ditch the overwhelm, follow their passion, and build a thriving art life on their own terms. I'm Roz, an Aussie artist, mum of two, and creative business coach who knows exactly how wild, wonderful, and wobbly the artist journey can be, because I've lived it. I left behind a safe teaching career to follow my heart into art, and now my work hangs in galleries and major art fairs across Australia. After years of coaching, I'm passionate about helping you ditch the starving artist myth, stick it to the naysayers, and design a creative life that truly lights you up. So if you're ready for real talk, practical tips, and heartfelt encouragement, you found your podcast. Hit follow and let's dive in. I was thinking we could start by talking a little bit about your background and how you came into the role that you have now with Aspire Gallery.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, firsthand, a lot of people would be surprised I don't have a background in the arts. So my background's actually law and business. So I'm actually a qualified lawyer. I'm admitted to the Supreme Court of Queensland, and outside of the gallery, actually do work in a legal capacity as well. But the gallery itself came about because we're actually family run. So it is me and my mum, Donna, and she's had a background in industrial interior design, used to lecture back when I was a baby, and at QCA and QUT here in Brisbane. She was an artist herself. And yeah, we basically came to this decision, let's open a gallery. And it works really well because she has that experience, that expertise in design, understanding the design elements, understanding what looks good together. She understands that really, really well. She also has a real eye for emerging artists and finding something that is a little bit more, I guess, new or sees potential with them, which is really interesting as well. And then I've come in with the business, the logistics, the tech, the social media, and everything like that.
Do you have little family arguments? Can I ask?
There's always going to be arguments in business. And I think it's harder when you're definitely with family because you don't have that, I guess, that work relationship, those work boundaries. But I think that's the benefit too. Like, we speak so freely, we are so open, we work and we know how each other operates too. I think we wouldn't have that if we weren't family.
Absolutely. Whenever I do see you at the fairs, I can pick up, that energy and that genuine teamwork and care for one another as well. And then I think you had also a cousin that was helping out at a recent fair.
So yeah, we've had family come in and help, which has been beautiful. I'm very fortunate that my dad is a very practical man and so helps like with the fairs, with boxing, hanging, packaging, everything. And then my brother actually, before I kind of got really heavily involved the first couple of years, and even some of the major exhibitions we have now, like petite pieces, were his ideas. But he's now runs his own firm and he's an intellectual property lawyer. So IP, copyright, trademarks, kind of perfect marry with the art world. And so it's very lucky that we have him in our back corner. So yeah, it's definitely the family all just supports each other, and having that strong support system behind you, I think, is the basis for any business to do well.
Beautiful. And so your gallery, I know, is very much about championing, brand new artists or artists that have been around, but they're just waiting to become more visible and be more seen. Like, I love that about your ethos at your gallery. So do you want to tell us maybe a little bit more about that as well?
Well, I think definitely when we first launched, we opened up as a lease-based gallery, So leasing our spaces. But we did it a bit differently because we found a lot of artists would go have a show, have no idea kind of, or hang their work, hope for the best, and then be really disappointed at the end when they didn't actually get any real results for like tangible results from it. And it didn't have to be sales. For some of them, it was, having that first exhibition. But we worked really closely with them to identify their goals, what they wanted, and really make sure that it was clear expectations for themselves where they wanted to move forward with it. And that kind of evolved over the years. We introduced a management program. So management was more like operating like you would a business band manager, helping these artists get into new opportunities, different industries, figuring out what suited their artwork. And then the gallery kind of developed into, when COVID hit, recognizing that people really wanted accessible, affordable art. And there were all these big galleries out there that had work that was really expensive, and there were beautiful community galleries around, but then there was these artists that were really wanting to make creatives out of their work, and customers were seeing it too and wanted good quality artwork, and Brisbane definitely didn't have that. So we kind of changed and adopted our model, and that's kind of where we've been since about 2019, and introducing things like the little feature wall. And we were seeing from that there were regular artists that were selling. Just every time we had their work, they were selling. And so that's when we introduced our stockroom to represent our artists and help them build sustainable art careers with regular selling, with regular opportunities, and just go from there. And so I think it's always been part of us that we've always done things a little bit differently than, you know, a lot of the fine end art, contemporary art galleries that are out there. We've kind of fit this little niche where we really just want to help artists sell their work, sell it regularly, build their career. And by default, I think that's then brought artists who really share those same values, that are either starting off brand new, never exhibited before, or other artists who, like you said, have been around the block for a little bit, but now really solidifying in who they are. One of our best-selling artists, Robin, he's actually 87 this year. And so for him,
Wow.
it was really for him not having that understanding of social media and things like that. And he used to win competitions, would win the Edgar every consecutive year. And all he kind of needed was framing his work 100%. And then from there, just kind of helping him brand himself. And now, he's recognized when we take him to Sydney, when we take him to Melbourne. He's with the beautiful Stephanie down in Wagga Wagga at Paper Pear and places like that. He was a successful artist in his own right, had been for many years, had this beautiful history, but for him, it was more just introducing him into the new era. So, yeah.
I love that you offer, a little bit of advice and direction where needed. I'm sure it's not for every single artist all the time.
Some of them don't need it. They know exactly what they're doing. So,
And also a lot of them already, like, they've already got something that's beautifully packaged up and it just already works. But not all galleries offer any sort of advice or direction or anything whatsoever. So I think that's an amazing perk to being with your gallery. On the topic of being with your gallery, I know you do offer the little feature wall, the unveiled opportunity as well. Can you let us know a little bit about how people can, or artists, can get involved with your gallery potentially?
Yeah, so we do run the multiple competitions a year. So we just had Foot Square in December, which was our under 500 small works wall. And then we do run its big sister competition. Used to be in January, now is being moved to the middle of the year. Petite Pieces, which doesn't have the price bracket and is a bit bigger. Both of them are great ways for us to source new artists, for artists to exhibit in a capacity where it's I guess, with a whole lot of other artists, so it takes the pressure off them. They're both, still competitions, so we have judges' choices from there. Normally, they get welcomed into our stockroom. We do the little feature, and the little feature is a great way for artists who've never exhibited before, who want to trial something, who just are like dipping their toes in the water, or regularly have little small works that they want to sell. We have some beautiful artists that just regularly submit work for that, and we curate the wall based on the submissions that we get every month. We do Unveiled, which is our round robin. People just submit online a portfolio of their work. And in February, we're having their finale exhibition, which is fantastic, which will be 12 beautiful artists from right around Australia and New Zealand. We've got one New Zealand artist, which we're really excited about. And that's kind of then that next step of unveiling kind of what we see as unveiling the next, not the next big thing, but the unveiling somebody who in some instances might have been overlooked or hasn't been seen in Australia, for instance, with that New Zealand artist. So that's one of our great competitions. It's brand new. This is only its second year of it, but we're really enjoying that. And again, the submissions, we get to see different artists' work, and I guess even trial some of them. Some of them haven't been selected as finalists, but I've reached out to them and said, hey, I'd really like to see your work in person. Let's trial it at the gallery, or I'd like to trial this particular style, which has been fantastic. And then we have our rotating shows throughout the year. Something not a lot of galleries do is like we are changing our exhibition, our space every about 5 to 6 weeks. And that is because our customers, we have regular customers who come in sometimes every week, sometimes every second week, who want to see what's new. So we do just a call out for that, and we keep the topics quite broad. We do 4 seasonal shows and then a Australian kind of themed bush-based show, because that's always a very popular subject.
And so would you say, the best way for artists to get amongst your gallery is to apply to one of these competitions? Is that the best way?
Yeah, absolutely. That helps us see what their work is like, what they're like in an exhibiting capacity, what their expectations are too. And sometimes that's not us. We really heavily promote all of our artists and our shows and everything like that. But we also do expect the artists to be promoting themselves. And some artists don't want that. They don't have the time, and that's absolutely fine. But that's different for us. And we work really as more of a collaboration. And we find that the artists get out as much from us as they do themselves. So, but that's definitely the best way. And sometimes the work literally arrives and we think it's absolutely stunning, and they get an email and in there and we're like, we want you as part of our gallery. Other times it's been funny. Like we've been watching and following an artist for like 3 years and they've been doing the same, but neither of us have reached out. And then they enter one of the shows and we're like, we loved your work for years. We're so excited. And they're like, oh, that's really lovely because I've been wanting to be part of your gallery for 3 years. And that's really beautiful because then I know, we're both on the same page, but it's just funny how that happens sometimes too. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you mentioned there as well, what an artist expects from the gallery, because I was actually asked recently by one of my coaching clients, I don't know what galleries are going to expect from me. And so this person was feeling nervous to apply to galleries because they were just unclear on that. So, if an artist listening is wanting to work with you, perhaps, like what is it that you would expect of them? So I know you're saying some social media marketing. What else? What makes an artist a good artist to be on your team from your perspective?
This is something I've talked about with other galleries out there and galleries that aren't also necessarily our major competition. We have lots of gallery friends around where we all work in like different parts of the market. But something that is shared across is artists doing their research before they approach a gallery, understanding what each of the galleries, what their market is, what their customer base is, sometimes what their price ranges are, because you don't want to jump into a gallery when you are someone who prioritizes under 500 works, for instance, and go into a gallery who's not got that market. They want to sell the 3,000 works. Of course, they're probably going to sit there and go, maybe not. So having a kind of an understanding of that, asking those questions to the gallery, because you might not necessarily be able to gauge that from their online presence or their catalogs or things like that. And then kind of from there, you don't have to have, like particularly with us, a massive social media following. I know some galleries really do like that. They like an established record of you've been selling that you can promote. With us, we have some artists who have 200 followers. doesn't mean they're not selling. It's just because they're new. And it doesn't have to be polished. If artists have that, that's even better. And from there, we can understand that they have a really clear understanding of who they are as an artist, what their brand is, what their market is. But that is also something that may develop. But I think the biggest thing is, understanding that, if you come on board with us, for instance, we're going to be sharing your work in stories or posts. Just share them back. We're more than happy if you do that. If you do some promotion of your work and want to learn that, that's fantastic. So they're probably the major ones. But I think the biggest thing for artists is if they want to approach a gallery, just try. That's the worst thing they are going to say is no. And I know that's disheartening, but you're not going to know if you don't try. We've had beautiful artists who've come in and they've told us it's their first time exhibiting, and we're like, why? Your work is beautifully priced, absolutely stunning. We will sell this in a heartbeat, but it's just that confidence. And, that's really exciting for us. But yeah.
Now, I was thinking as you were chatting as well about how artists can, reach out to galleries. I know you've mentioned your competition sort of options. I'm just so curious now with the whole ChatGPT AI bizzo. Are you finding that the written parts of various applications are just cookie cutter, same? Like, how do you decipher a good, other than the art itself, obviously, how do you decipher a good submission or application, as opposed to just, I don't know, something that's just been churned
Yeah.
out?
Interestingly, sometimes when I really like an artist, I don't necessarily have read all of their written statement. And their written statement for us is such a minor part of it. We want to understand where the artwork has come from, the artist's background, and things like that. So it's definitely still important. But I guess for us, for our applications, we're more looking, we'll ask for their social media handle to go and see what else they do, to see if they're consistent in their style, where else they're exhibiting, what they're showing. But I have definitely noticed it with some of my other artists when they're applying for things and they get us to read feedback. I think it's becoming more common, and I think artists do have to watch and be careful with it. Like I will firsthand say that I use ChatGTP 100%, but I think that's definitely something artists have to remember. I do know that there's a handful of competitions out there that the statement is a massive part of which work gets selected or not. And it's really making sure that they fit the brief, really making sure that they're reflecting what their work is about, um, how it connects to audiences. And you have to be careful with ChatGTP because it will sound robotic sometimes, even online listings. If you're uploading your work onto online platforms like Blue Thumb and you're just doing a generic post about it, ChatGTP isn't understanding necessarily your brand, your story, your personality. And I think personality and branding is so massive for an artist. More and more customers are wanting to know who is behind this artist, what's their story, how can I relate to them? Because then they'll relate their story. And if you are using cookie cutter approaches for that, you're not going to have um, that reaction from the customers or from your audience. So, yeah,
Yeah, that it's got to do with the authenticity, I think, almost the energetics behind that as well. Like GPT is a great tool, so an AI great tool to have in the mix. But
yeah,
yeah, I agree with what you're saying as well. There are ways, you can train Chat GPT on your brand and how you speak and all of that. But even then, I know some people actually, when they create their marketing captions and whatever, they purposely include typos as a demonstration that this was human
yeah,
made.
I would say, yeah, you do have to be careful because I've used it and it sometimes makes me a lot more sassy than I actually am. And so I'll be reading back these captions and be like, that's not me whatsoever.
Now, I have a little end of interview question that I like to ask, and I'm springing this on you. I didn't
Okay.
prepare you for this one. The question is, if you were to wind back the clock, say 10, 15 years, and look at the version of you back then and give yourself some advice, what advice would you have given yourself at that stage, roughly that stage?
That's a really good question. I guess for us, I definitely wouldn't change any of the trajectory that the gallery has had. If we had tried to open the gallery as we are now, back in 2013, 2014, Brisbane just didn't have a market for it. Yeah, that's something I'm really proud of, the growth and the change and how we've adapted and how we've built to where we are now. Definitely a big thing I would have taught myself was that structure and system and processes are so imperative from an early starting point, because we hit this period about 2 years ago where we just exponentially grew, and it was crazy. We are still doing that type of growth, but we now have the systems in place to support it. Back then, we were selling so much more regularly, and it was trying to keep track of everything, make the time for it, and have really efficient systems to make sure that we weren't being bogged down on that. And hindsight is a beautiful thing. And I'm just so grateful for definitely so many of the artists who have grown with us through some of those teething processes and who have stayed by our side. We were always really transparent with our artists, with our customers, with everyone. That's something that we probably pride ourselves on, is transparency and just being open and being approachable. But yeah, so even for artists, don't under anticipate that you won't just suddenly start growing. And if you haven't got structure built in now, for artists, it's having clear inventory. So at any point in time, you know what's where, but even having that price history. So, I sold this piece at that time, clear folders of where your marketing images are, where your artwork images are, templates for invoicing, certificates, anything you need. And having that readily accessible and built in a way that you can then just move from that, and then creating structure for yourself. I know some artists work where certain days of the week are their admin days, where they build in making sure they build all their social media content on a Monday and then share it throughout the week. Tuesdays is their inventory admin day where they're checking on things. Building that routine in is, I think, really important, because then when you start growing, and hopefully, any artists listening, once they'll hit this point that they'll grow, they've already got the structure built in. So that's probably the biggest thing I would have taught myself. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that idea. I think structure not often feels like the opposite of creativity, but actually when you reach that point and you really need the structure, that it's actually the lack of structure that is causing all the stress. So structure actually gives you less stress, which actually gives you then more creativity. So yeah, I love that tip. Now also, where can our lovely listeners find out more about you, catch you online, and check out your competitions and all of that jazz? Where's the best place for them to head?
Our website always has everything. Also, then definitely our social media, our Instagram. We always do our call outs on there. You'll always find posts about it, always find the links to our website for our competition, what's on, our catalogs if you want to buy some art or want to see what's out there.
And I'm trying to remind myself, because I don't want to misquote, but what is your website?
Just www.aspiregallery.com.au.
Okay, so that's the website, and social media is
just at Aspire Gallery.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Irene. It's been great to learn more about you, your journey, and also more about Aspire Gallery, what you represent, and how our listeners can get amongst all the fabulousness that you offer to artists. So thank you.
Thank you so much for having me, Roz. It was lovely to catch up when we were both in Sydney, but it was Sydney, right? Yeah, it was Sydney. What you're doing is absolutely fantastic for the artists. So well done, you.
Thanks. You can come back. We say all the right things. All right. Talk to you soon.
Sounds good. Thanks.